Sorry. Ron.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
John. Joycelyn.
Here.
Michelle. John. Michelle. Okay, we have a quorum. I think John is on en route here.
I'm sorry.
I believe John is on his way here.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next matter is to approve the agenda. Can we have a motion for that?
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Second. Okay, I can second that. We have a second, Joyce. It's been
Well,
moved.
no, I have a question about it.
Okay,
I just want to know why the resolution in the later meeting was not in this.
well, by the way,
The resolution for the director was not in this meeting. Because it's neither coming from this committee or the personnel committee.
I don't know, but it is it on the meeting for the board
For the
meeting?
board meeting.
Is it on the agenda?
It's in the agenda, it's listed in there, but it's not on this meeting agenda.
Okay, I guess I don't see it. Where is it on the?
When you go into board docs,
I do. But it's not on the printed agenda that we posted on the board bill.
I'm never, yeah. I don't
Under
understand
old
that question.
business, it's got the voting item, the appointment of acting.
yeah, it's under item 6.4, is the appointment letter and the appointment interim director resolution, but the resolution is not on this agenda.
I don't. That's just where it's at.
Well, that would be a board decision. This committee is to,
Just ad hoc.
Right, but the way our committee structure is, any contracts for director should be going through the personnel committee.
okay, then we'll just amend it. But this is not a personnel committee, so then we'll just.
Right, I was just asking if it was coming from this committee, it should
it's
be on
not.
this agenda.
It's not. from
But
this
it would
committee.
neither be coming from the personnel committee because it has not been referred to the personnel committee.
That's fine.
Okay. All right then. All right.
Okay, so I move to second that we approve this agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, next matter to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, good. Now, for the reason we're here, Shanna, Chris, you have the floor.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing us to come and give you an update on where we are from a search perspective. We appreciated the list of topics that you wanted us to make sure we covered. And so we're going to give it our best shot to do that, and certainly encourage you to keep us honest and ask us questions as we go. Let me just tell you at a high level, we're excited. We're starting to make some good progress out in the market. We are going to propose that we push out the timeline just a little bit. We'll talk about that in a minute when Chris shares his part of the report. But I do think we're starting to make some good headway and encouraged by what we're seeing out in the market. So what I'd like to do is start with the listening tour. We sent you the written summary of the listening tour, and I'm not going to read that to you, but I thought it might be helpful just to give you some high-level observations from our perspective. And Chris, please feel free to come in behind me as well. We are very, very pleased with the level of engagement by stakeholders on the listening tour. I think we talked to about 40 people individually and in small groups via Zoom or phone calls. And then we actually had 265 responses to the employee survey. So again, we think that that shows a high level of engagement. We've got a lot of people with a lot of vested interest in being heard and hopefully doing their part to ensure that you all pick a superstar for the next leader. So, just a few high level observations. And again, you've got the summary report, but if I really peel back the onion and look at some of the very key things that we heard time and time again, bottom line, I think the biggest we heard over and over again was we need someone who first and foremost is a very, very strong leader with an ability to manage up and down, the ability to really reach across the aisle at times when perhaps there are dissenting perspectives and opinions, knows how to collaborate, really build consensus, and really work very effectively with this team. And I think we heard that both from the stakeholders as well as the staff. In no particular order, but if you look at the bar graph that we sent you from the one question on the employee survey, open communication was the single biggest thing that people told us they wanted. So again, really strong leader who's a very good communicator, is open, transparent, we heard across the board. Another key area that we heard pretty consistently was someone who is very willing and enthusiastic about really lifting up diversity, kind of in all senses of the word. And so that was something, again, it came out loud and clear in the survey to employees, but also in those interviews that we did with kind of community stakeholders. Values driven, we heard values time and time again, integrity, values, subscribes to the ALA standards and other library related codes of ethics. This was something that was very, very important to people. And again, I've already mentioned, savvy in terms of navigating through opposing perspectives and opinions, that kind of thing. Somebody put it well, and I think this is a great summary characteristic that we heard in a number of different ways, but a fence mender for times that maybe there have been some stress and tension and opposing views, someone who really has that ability to bring people together. So those were, I think, the biggies that we heard. Interestingly, we asked quite a few people, does this person need to already know or understand the landscape of kind of the mid-continent geographic footprint? And I think what we heard is, yeah, that's great and certainly preferred if you have the right person. However, they also believed if you had those other characteristics, you likely were able to acclimate in your broader community and do so pretty quickly and quite effectively. So I think we heard a slight preference for somebody local if they check the other boxes, but again, it wasn't a must-have by any stretch of the imagination. We did hear pretty much from everybody, somebody that is a true librarian is very important. I think I understand that's part of your bylaws, if I'm not mistaken. We had a couple of people who said, you know what, they can surround themselves with awesome librarians. We just need a really strong leader. But I think we heard more so than not that someone who really has a good grasp and understanding of that profession is very, very important. Really not important to most folks, fundraising experience. And I know that that's less of the role, but folks did tend to rank that much, much lower. So again, diversity, great leader, great communicator, able to mend those fences, really reach across the aisle and collaborate and build consensus across kind of diverse perspectives were the big highlights that we heard time and time again. Chris, anything you'd like to add to that?
The only other thing that emerged to me that I didn't hear as much from what you mentioned, Shannon, was emphasis on innovation and how innovative that MCPL has been over the years, that looking for someone that can help continue that path for the organization.
Yep, thank you. So I think this was a very helpful exercise. I think Chris and I are paying very close attention to some of these experiences, characteristics, attributes as we're evaluating candidates. But that's sort of the greatest hits version of, I think, our big takeaways from this whirlwind listening tour. Any questions that you all would like to ask in regard to that? All right. Well, let's move on then, and we're going to talk a little bit about the status of inquiries. Just as a heads up, we are not going to share specific candidate information. As you'll remember, we're saving that for a meeting yet to come. But Chris, I'll push to you to give a high-level overview of where we are.
Yep. So we have now been a few weeks into the market with the position having been posted to the sort of the typical industry sites that you would want to launch to, including ALA especially. We've not seen too many applications through that route. We've seen some folks, but a lot of it has been from smaller districts. We've been leaning especially on proactive search, seeking out larger districts with similar footprints, really trying to hone in on library districts that have at least a significant portfolio with multiple locations, preferably with a mix of environments, urban, rural, suburban. And we've identified multiple candidates through that process. And between the folks that have been proactively applying and those that we've sought out and brought into this process, we've gone through the beginning stages of evaluating and interviewing already for several. So there seems to be some progress here that we are happy with, but we're continuing to aggressively source to identify additional candidates. I would say that there's the only thing that we've noticed, outside of this district that has some level of impact on our search was conversations we've had around retirements that have gone on in similar library districts recently, and then others that we have a sense are going to be coming up in the near future. So just keeping an eye on that, as obviously there's it's a small network of folks that are qualified to lead districts this large. So that will obviously influence how many of those are considering multiple options at the same time. So that's a little bit about what we're seeing so far within the market. But any additional questions that we can answer for you? So given what we've seen, I think and what I mentioned here, I think we'd like to talk to you now about proposing some changes to the schedule. Where we are today, what we've seen in the market, essentially is telling us, there's only so many library districts that are comparable to MCPL. Based on what we've seen from the incoming pool, we know that the market is such where the demand for qualified folks that can fill this position is in competition with the supply of folks that are actively seeking these opportunities. And so as such, I think we want to make sure we have enough time in the market to identify as strong a pool as possible for you to consider for this position. So with that said, I think essentially what we're proposing at this point is to push things back about 2 weeks for each stage. So the presentation of candidates we had originally scheduled for August 9th. I think we'd like to propose pushing that back to the week of August 22nd. The first round of interviews was slated to kick off on August 16th. We'd like to propose pushing that back to August 29th. Second round of interviews was originally slated for August 21st. We recommend September 5th. The on-site interviews, we recommend pushing back 1 week instead of the 2 weeks. So originally it was the week of September 12th. We'd recommend the week of September 19th, knowing if we can carve out dates ahead of time. With each of these, we feel confident that we can continue to communicate what those time slots are to candidates so that they have enough frame of reference to understand if they are to move forward in the process, they should be making themselves available for these specific windows so that as soon as decisions are made on your end, as far as who you'd like to move forward in the process, we can come to them with them already having an understanding of when you would possibly be wanting to speak with them as each step of this process progresses. So any questions, thoughts, or feedback about that proposed timeline?
Could you go through those dates again real quickly?
Happy to. So again, originally the presentation of candidates, us coming to you with some folks that we'd recommend and want to introduce to you, that was originally slated for August 9th. We would recommend the week of August 22nd. So pushing that back 2 weeks. Again, from there, that would push back each of these first 2 rounds 2 weeks. So the first round of interviews was originally slated for August 16th. We would recommend the week of August 29th. The second round of interviews was originally slated for August 24th. We would recommend pushing that back to the week of September 5th. And then on-site interviews, we recommend, originally that was slated for the week of September 12th. We recommend pushing that back 1 week to the week of September 19th.
Would you be circulating dates during that week to figure out what works?
We would coordinate with you and I guess with Cody to figure out what everyone's availability is and carve out some slots ahead of time so that we know those days and times are blocked out.
And I think what we could do like before is have Carla, if you all would commit to please in the next couple of days, checking your calendars and responding to a doodle poll, we can send that out again and give you a couple of options so that hopefully we can lock in very quickly and everybody's got their calendar blocked.
And just for clarification, Chris, you said Cody, would you send that to me?
I'm sorry, Carla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So again, we're encouraged, we're making some good headway, but we do want to make sure we use your time in the very, very best way. And therefore, we told you at the beginning, we had kind of a proposed timeline, but then we were going to wave the flag if we felt like we needed to shift up or back slightly. And I think if we can do that, we'll be in good shape. All right, it was not on the list, but someone asked that we spend a little bit of time talking about the board, the search committee's role in this process, the board's role in this process, and just making sure that we're on track and compliant accordingly. You'll remember that we described the search process as really 4 buckets of work. First bucket was listening tour, check, that's done. Second bucket is sourcing for candidates. That rests squarely on our shoulders. We're going to continue sourcing across the life of the search, truly until the very end. So that's our responsibility. Really, your involvement kicks into high gear starting that week of August 22nd, assuming we can get that to work as proposed by Chris. Again, just to review the pieces that you all are going to be heavily involved with, we will meet with you. We'll go into executive session. We will present a group of candidates to the selection committee. These people will be fully interviewed by Chris and me. We'll talk through their backgrounds. We'll give you all of their written information, all of that good stuff. Typically what happens is that a selection committee will listen to that group of candidates. It may be 5, it may be 7, it may be 10. There's no magic number. It's really what we believe to be just the very, very best kind of the A team, so to speak, of the most qualified candidates who meet, as close to the bullseye as we believe is possible. So typically what the committee will do, some committees will choose to interview everyone that we recommend. Other committees, more times than not, will call that list down a bit and maybe decide to interview, call it a handful of candidates in an initial round. Once those decisions are made, and we'll facilitate that discussion, that decision making. And then as Chris said, the week, I believe you said, Chris, of the 29th, we'll move to first round interviews. We'll help you with the structure of those interviews. We'll talk through what questions are going to be asked. We'll do all of the scheduling, all of that. So we're there with you the whole step of the way, every step of the way. But we'll help you. Obviously, you're going to be very heavily involved in interviewing those candidates. And then, we'll typically have maybe 3 rounds, maybe 2 rounds, depending on the level of consensus among your group as we move through the process. So, so far you all have been great. You've engaged through the listening tour. You've given us names, all of that. Really the heavy lifting on behalf of your committee starts that week of August 22nd, once you start reviewing candidate backgrounds and then interviewing folks. Any questions on that?
Yes, Shanna, I had one. I'm wondering, typically before the August 22nd meeting, would you be sending us a synopsis or resume of each candidate so we have kind of a heads up, or
Yes.
what are your procedures?
Yes, we will absolutely do that. I'm glad you mentioned that, Ron. What we typically do with a search like this to add an extra layer of confidentiality, because it is very, very important. Some of these people were not looking for jobs when we approached them. Some are very concerned about confidentiality and will be until you likely get to a final on-site round. So we have a secure portal. It's called the Smart Vault. And what we will do, or what Carla will do, is upload all of the CVs and cover letters for those who submitted a cover letter into that secure portal. Typically we'll do that, call it 3 days in advance of the meeting, 2 to 3 days in advance of us presenting candidates, so that you can review those resumes. And then when we meet, we're going to give you our evaluation verbally over and above what you see just by reading a resume. So yes, you'll get that information in advance.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, Carla, you mentioned Shannon, you mentioned how very important it was to maintain confidentiality of the candidates. At what point would that no longer be an issue? Kind of hire and acceptance, or at what point?
Well, that's something we're going to need to work with you on, what your sunshine laws require and don't around that. I will tell you, when we've done work in other states that have FOIA laws that are much more stringent than others, typically we will try to maintain very strict confidentiality until you get down to a group of finalists who are coming on site. That's usually not less than 2, not more than 4. I also believe at that point, once you're going to be exposed to a whole bunch of different key stakeholders, you're in the community, you're seeing the system, all of that, all bets are off with confidentiality. We do what we can to not publish it in the newspaper if it doesn't have to be, and that kind of thing. But typically candidates understand that if they make it to a final round on-site interview, the veil of confidentiality is typically lifted at that point. I will tell you, sometimes candidates will opt out if that's a requirement. And if they say that they want to call it 4 because, maybe they've got a 25% chance of getting this job, and, they're going to really weigh that risk reward ratio and make decisions accordingly. But most people in this space, we have found on other searches, are pretty accustomed to that being part of the process. Good question then.
Shannon, leading up to the August 22nd meeting, is it typical, or I guess I'm wondering, what is the average process for other clients of yours? If you receive a lot of interest in candidates, do you typically filter through them before you have a presentation of a select group, or pretty much unload everything that comes in?
No, what we typically do is, listen, we've already interviewed a bunch of people that we don't think are qualified or what I would call tier 1 candidates. So, typically we'll talk to 100 or more potential candidates on a search. Many of them are not interested. Many we will, in our professional opinion, deem them less qualified for the role. So typically we bring to you the very small select group that we feel like is really best in breed in terms of what we've seen out in the market and been able to, garner interest in moving forward in the process. Having said that, Ron, we will certainly have, and some selection committees would like to see, the rest of the potential candidates who either submitted an application or wanted to be considered who did not move forward in our smaller, slate that we presented to you for consideration. So we can certainly have that available. We don't want that mass distributed at all, but if there is a reason that you all would like to see those, we can certainly have that available at that meeting.
Okay, great. I guess my thought is that I prefer not to have all of that, because that's
typically what you pay us to do. Yeah. All right. Other questions? Okay. Well, I think that's it for us. But again, we're looking forward to sharing some backgrounds with you in the next few weeks. In the meantime, we are doubling down on sourcing and continuing to interview people, and fully committed to bringing you a group of great options for your consideration.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Bye-bye.
Here we are. Okay, Teresa, do we have anybody wishing to comment?
No,
Okay. Any other business?
Just a quick question. Are we
Gotcha.
okay on Sunshine Law with that, with the way she described it, so that we
I
can
don't
keep
know.
it?
Yeah, if
Okay.
you're looking at me, that's something I put down. I can look into it for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, I think we need to understand that a little bit better. What she described is what you hope will happen every time. You keep it as secret as you can. And until the last, few,
Yeah.
and then people have to give up and say, okay, I'll make a choice here.
Yeah, I think that's raises a kind of an intriguing question or problem. When you're finding somebody to allocate tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money, I think people have a right to know, just as selection for school boards, school superintendents, chiefs of police, everything else. So we have a lawyer.
And I have a big book here, so I'll look
Yes,
into it and let you know.
Okay, any other business? Hearing none, motion to adjourn,
So move.
I move to adjourn.
second, it's been moved and second to adjourn, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're done.